Welcome to a live edition of Legal AF and Michael Popok. I'm going to give you what's going on at the intersection of law and politics for this Tuesday edition. Glad you're here with us. And let's get right to it without blowing smoke or sunshine. First thing we're going to talk about is, of course, the dismissal, but without prejudice, meaning the case could come back against Donald Trump in the Chutkan D.C. election interference case. What's going on in Mar-a-Lago? What does without prejudice mean? And why did Jack Smith, or how did Jack Smith figure out a way to outfox Donald Trump at the very end and send him, speaking of special counsel, a special love note to Donald Trump in his final filing? I'm going to tell you what that's all about as we wait for the final reports about Mar-a-Lago, special counsel reports, and about the D.C. election interference case, which is going to end up in the hands of Merrick Garland very, very soon, who's told the American people he's going to release the reports. I'm going to talk about the importance of it, and we're going to do a little bit of a criticism and critique of Merrick Garland, who single-handedly may be the person, more than even Kamala Harris and Democrats, why we have Donald Trump returning to the presidency. I'll break all that down in a minute. And speaking of MAGA outbursts, let's talk about Rudy Giuliani, who couldn't contain himself in a New York federal courtroom today in front of Judge Lyman about the $150 million judgment he owes Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss for defaming and lying about them and intentionally inflicting emotional distress on them, and the outburst that came in which the judge told Rudy, I'll give you the kind of the teaser here, you either swear in as a witness and take the stand, or you serve as your own lawyer. But this thing you're doing where you're acting out and yelling out in federal court and while your lawyers are sitting there, that ends now. And then I'll also tell you whether Rudy Giuliani is going to be able to kind of take off and avoid a major hearing about his assets and about his Florida condo and about his Yankee rings that he got because he was the mayor of New York, because he's on the planning committee for the inauguration. Oh, boo-hoo. Let's hear what Judge Lyman had to say about that when it was raised. And then we're going to, and some funny comments that Rudy Giuliani made after the courtroom outside. Sometimes that's where some of the best things happen. And then we got to talk about this assault on the American economy. The assault on the American economy. I have no other way to put it. And that is at the hands of Donald Trump. This is not a video game. Let's see what will happen if we take 11 million people out of the economy and take away the undocumented who are 40% of the workforce for major sectors of our economy, including construction, including the food supply chain, which means your housing and your egg prices and your fruit and your chicken prices. Let's just make them disappear tomorrow. And at the same time, and for good measure, let's enter into a trade war and a tariff war with three major trading countries, China, Canada, and Mexico, who are responsible for 40% of our trade economy. Let's do that at the same time. This is not Madden football. Let's figure out what would happen if I played 4 quarterbacks and no defense. This is the economy, stupid, as they used to say. And I'm going to talk about what's going to happen with the trade war that Donald Trump has picked a fight with, including with the president of Mexico, who, by the way, has a doctorate in the economy. She's an economist. And Canada. And why are they getting sanctioned higher than China? I thought this whole race for the White House was about, we got to control China. Well, why are you taxing our allies in North America 3 times that? Then we'll talk about the I think that might be enough. Is that enough for today? I might have time for one more major topic. You're here live, Popok, talking about law and politics at the intersection. So let's get to it. Thank you for being here. First of all, before we get started, I want to thank everybody for their contributions and their support for the Legal AF YouTube channel. 60,000, no more than 60,000 people have joined, free subscribe to the Legal AF YouTube channel we do in collaboration with the Midas Touch Network since the election day. For those that thought, oh, this whole thing's going to shrivel up and die. No, it's time to lean in, not lean back. It's time to redouble our efforts. And that's exactly what we're doing here on Legal AF. So thank you for joining. If you don't know what I'm talking about, as I adjust my chair, if you don't know what we're talking about, come over to Legal AF MTN for Midas Touch Network over on YouTube. Amazing content exclusively there. I'm at the intersection of law and politics. I'm the chief curator. You'll see a lot of me doing my analysis, but others as well. Shan Wu, prosecutors, Karen Friedman Ignifilo, Dina Dahl, Court Accountability Action, new shows that you haven't even maybe thought about, like Unprecedented. Once a week, we do a show about the United States Supreme Court, and I do it with Dina Dahl. Thank you again. A little commercial ad there for Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Let's get on to what happened this week and what it means for democracy, what it means for the future, what it means on how to control, if we can, Donald Trump's criminal instincts in his next term. We told you this was going to happen, so it shouldn't have come as a shock if you're a regular follower of Midas Touch or Legal AF. We told you that Jack Smith was in the process of making the decision to dismiss both the Mar-a-Lago case, which is the espionage obstruction of justice case, and the election interference case. So it was just a matter of time before he got around to filing it. We thought it would be sometime before December, early December, the week before Thanksgiving. Made perfect sense. He certainly was going to go now rather than wait to be fired by Donald Trump, who's threatened to not only fire Jack Smith, but also to go after and persecute, not prosecute, persecute everybody on his team, everybody in the Department of Justice who worked on the cases against Donald Trump, everybody in the FBI, the whole kit and caboodle. And so Jack Smith dismissed, but he also did two things, which I think were very, very smart in dismissing. And he filed his motion for leave to dismiss the indictment without prejudice. Let me unpack all that procedurally as a lawyer here, practices in these kind of cases. In order to dismiss an indictment, you can't just do it on your own unilaterally if you're the prosecutor. You've got to get court permission, especially if you're going to do it without prejudice. Without prejudice means that it can be refiled in the future. And why you have to get the court's permission is that the court protects defendants, not named Donald Trump, from being abused or harassed by prosecutors who are just constantly indicting and dismissing, and, you know, putting a complete shadow and public criticism against the person for no good reason. So you got to go to the judge and you got to ask nicely and show the grounds. And the grounds for it were simple. It's listed in Jack Smith's motion. It's that the Office of Legal Counsel, the OLC, which is effectively the internal in-house Supreme Court for the Department of Justice, whatever the OLC says, that's what the Department of Justice does. And they asked them the question, because it's one that, you know, it's not easy to come up with. The question that the Jack Smith team asked is, when you're prosecuting a former president who committed crimes while he was president the first time, who gets elected again to be president before you've had the opportunity to actually try the case against him, but you've already indicted him, does the Constitution and the law around Article 2, which is the presidential powers law, require a dismissal of the case because it's impairing or impeding the office of the presidency? Yes or no? Sort of like asking AI or ChatGPT or a magic 8-ball. And the Office of Legal Counsel came back and said under their analysis that they could not, because Donald Trump got elected again and there wasn't enough time to get the trial done before he actually stepped into office. They had to dismiss the case. Not because it didn't have merit, not because the evidence didn't support it, but because it would impair and impede the powers of the presidency, regardless of who's occupying it. They care about the institution of the presidency, even though we're all sort of rolling our eyes and scrunching up our nose over it and holding our nose over it because it's Donald Trump and he created this scenario in collaboration, unfortunately, with Merrick Garland, who waited 19 months to start the investigation that led to the prosecution and indictment of Donald Trump. We'll leave that for a little bit later in the live broadcast. But because it will, having the shadow of a criminal indictment, prosecution and all that undermines the power and authority of the President of the United States to do his job, both foreign and domestically. I mean, you know, Donald Trump doesn't care that he's a convicted felon when he's negotiating with his adversaries abroad, like Putin and North Korea's chairman or any of them. But most people wouldn't want that to be part of their portfolio of work. And so we give them what's called temporary immunity. It's a temporary condition, and it evaporates as soon as the term is over. And for Donald Trump, we know when the term is over. He may not recognize it, but the rest of us do. It's going to be in 2029. And so at the end of 2029, then whatever was happening then, we can restart. So that's the reason. So the judge says, I understand why you're doing it without prejudice, because a future prosecutor, maybe in the hands of a future Department of Justice, you don't want to tie his hands and dismiss outright, which is what Donald Trump's been calling for in New York, what he's calling for everywhere, complete dismissal with prejudice, meaning never to be revived. And the judge says, yeah, I see why you're doing it without prejudice, because the OLC's guidelines were that it's a temporary immunity. Remember that word, that concept of temporary immunity? Because I'm going to talk more about it next week on another live edition when we talk about the New York case and sentencing. Same concept, temporary nature of the reason you can't currently prosecute, try, and or sentence Donald Trump, which evaporates and ends in 2029. Now, a lot of the Trump world after the dismissal, let me mention one thing in the dismissal I thought was very, very interesting. Two things. One, by Judge Chutkan to help out the special counsel and protect him a bit from future prosecution or persecution by Donald Trump's Department of Justice, and the other from Jack Smith's team themselves. Let's start with Jack Smith's team. They said the reason we're dismissing is not because, and here's the implication, not because we're afraid of Donald Trump, not because we have doubts about the quality of our evidence or the weight of our evidence against you, the decision to make to begin the investigation or prosecution, the indictment that we obtained, none of that. We stand behind all of our decisions and the strength of our case. I love the fact that Molly Gaston, writing on behalf of Jack Smith, said basically, F you, middle finger, for those that are listening, to Donald Trump. We're not scared of you. I know you want us to obey and to bow because of fear and the interim effect of threatening to go after us, but we stand behind our work. The decision to indict you, the indictment, the quality and the weight of the evidence that we had against you, and the crimes that we're going to lay out. This is my read between the lines. The crimes that we're going to lay out for the American people in our 2 reports to be given to Merrick Garland in the next couple of weeks. F you to Donald Trump. You want to come after me? Come after us. We stand behind our work as career civil servants. We're doing our job for justice. Now, what did Chutkan do? Chutkan helped him out by saying, the other reason I'm going to grant the motion for leave to dismiss the indictment without prejudice is that I don't see any indication that there was any harassment by the prosecutors of Donald Trump. No harassment without prejudice is fine by me. That's also going to help out if we ever see a Pam Bondi try to prosecute Jack Smith. Oh my God, there's a mismatch there. And I mean in favor of Jack Smith. Then at least we have a federal judge who overseed the prosecution and overseed the entirety of the criminal indictment process against Donald Trump, saying, I never saw anything untoward by the prosecutors and certainly no harassment or anything like that. So I like the fact that that was in this decision as well. Now, Trump world, or that great, as I said in a recent hot take on Legal AF, the legal brain trust that is Eric Trump, who never went to law school. He jumped up and down in a recent posting on social media or an interview, and he said, there's other ramifications of this dismissal without prejudice, meaning it could be refiled in the future. It can't be refiled in the future. See, they're trying to cover up for the fact that the lawyers for Donald Trump sort of screwed this up because they didn't oppose the motion for leave to amend without prejudice. They should have said it should be with prejudice. We should never see this indictment again, and here's why, so that it's kind of preserved on appeal. But they didn't do that because they're not that good, despite the fact that they're going to have the number 1 or number 2 job in the Department of Justice when this whole thing is over. So Eric Trump jumped up and down to try to cover for them and said, double jeopardy. And statute of limitations. It's like, when you deal with them, it's like some sort of a misbegotten kitchen magnet poetry. It's just words that they heard somewhere or somebody wrote in their palm for them to say out loud. And then let me explain this to you. Okay. Neither of those concepts apply. There's no double jeopardy because there was no single jeopardy. Let me explain. In order for there to be jeopardy, what's called jeopardy attaching, to allow for double jeopardy. Because if you ask the average person on the street, what's double jeopardy? They'll be like, can't be prosecuted twice for the same crime. I mean, that's kind of, people sort of know that. Not exactly right. You can be prosecuted twice. You just can't have jeopardy attached twice. So let me interpret. Jeopardy attaches, especially in federal court, after a jury, not the grand jury, a jury, the petit jury, the one that makes the decisions about criminal liability or not, either guilt or innocence, that they're sworn in. Once that jury is in the box sworn in, jeopardy attaches. And after that, okay, if there's some sort of hung jury or mistrial or an attempt by another prosecutor somewhere to bring a similar or identical case, they won't be able to, because that would be double jeopardy, because that would be a second jeopardy. But there's no single jeopardy here, so there can't be double jeopardy. I think everybody here that follows us here on a live podcast like this knows and is frustrated by the fact that the case never went to trial. We've been in the indictment, motion to dismiss, immunity stage for a long, long time, for over 2 years, delayed by almost 9 months by the United States Supreme Court. We never picked a jury in the DC election interference case, never picked a jury in the Mar-a-Lago case. So there can't be double jeopardy. And the statute of limitations doesn't run either, because it's, first of all, most statute of limitations for the crimes are over 10 years in federal court. And some of them don't even have a statute of limitations. And they are stayed. The clock stops like a giant snooze button, boom, for the period of time where there'd be temporary immunity for Donald Trump. So you just deduct the 4 years that he's president, and then the clock continues. So neither of those concepts help Donald Trump out in the least. When we come back from a quick commercial break, and let me just take a moment out here for a second and say something that we sometimes say on the podcast. We're really grateful, and our audience hopefully is too, and appreciative, that after the election we have sponsors. They understand not only our First Amendment right to do what we're doing here, but they know our tonality. They know our editorial voice. They don't know exactly what I'm going to say. Well, let's be honest. I barely know exactly what I'm going to say before I start doing this, but they're supportive in general of the themes and the thematic and our point of view, right? Our voice, if you will, and they support it. And so we need to support them because they were here for us. We didn't lose any sponsors because of what happened on election day. They're here for it, and we're here for them. So let's run our first set of sponsors. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored advice to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then, Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game, because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does. Optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, etc. It can also track your cycle and adjust your recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through hormonal shifts, so you can keep up your energy and stave off cravings. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/legalaf to get 15% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/legalaf for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Let's face it, after a night with drinks, I don't bounce back the next day like I used to. I have to make a choice. I can either have a great night or a great next day. That is until I found Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink. Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Now look, I won't lie. I was a bit on the fence about pre-alcohol initially. But then, while hanging out with my fantasy football draft crew over at our favorite Jersey Shore sports bar, I gave it a shot. And believe me, it's the real deal. I spent the entire next day doing all my favorite things with my family, including a long hike on our favorite trail. I kept hearing about pre-alcohol, and I wondered what it was actually like. But now that I've tried it, I believe the hype. And with their GMO technology, they will release different products that help address toxic byproducts of modern living in the gut. Go to zbiotics.com/legalaf to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Legal AF at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/legalaf and use the code legalaf at checkout for 15% off. Okay, so let's just briefly touch on Mar-a-Lago. Then I want to talk about this economy, wrecking the economy, and then we'll go to Rudy Giuliani. The Mar-a-Lago case was also on, that one was on appeal, a little bit different procedural posture. That's the Espionage Act obstruction of an official, obstruction of justice claims against Donald Trump because he played, hide the documents, top secret classified documents from the United States of America, other people, and federal judges. And that went up on appeal by the Department of Justice because Eileen Cannon, federal judge appointed by Trump, decided for the first time in 250 years that she was going to dismiss an indictment, finding that the special counsel is invalid because it was improperly appointed, it wasn't confirmed by the Senate, it wasn't funded properly by Congress. Side note, there's talk of making Matt Gaetz, remember him? A special counsel to go after Jack Smith. Okay, now we're in the upside down world. And the argument is he doesn't need Senate confirmation because that's what Joe Biden's position was. But that's not the position of the lawyers that are in the room for Donald Trump in these various cases. I think he's going to be hard pressed to take the opposite position and appoint without Senate confirmation a special counsel. Let me go back to Mar-a-Lago. Case went up on appeal to the 11th Circuit. Everyone in my line of work sort of came to the same conclusion. If the 11th Circuit ever got around to it, they were going to reverse Judge Aileen Cannon, find that she had made a, how do we put this, reversible error, faux pas, and for her third time in the case, and reverse her decision and send it back. Maybe not to Eileen Cannon, especially now that she's being touted for attorney. She was being touted for attorney general at one point, but at some point, and so we have that. But we thought maybe we're not going to get the chance now because we knew that Jack Smith was going to dismiss the indictment, but he's going to make it hard on Donald Trump. He's going to dismiss or the appeal. He's going to dismiss the appeal, Jack Smith, the Mar-a-Lago appeal. That's at the 11th Circuit, but not for everybody. So Carlos de Oliveira, the maintenance worker, have a seat. Okay. Walt Nauta, the valet butler, you too, have a seat. You're not going anywhere. Now, a lot of people in our chat, I'm sure, are ready to start typing, Trump will just give him a pardon. He may. But Jack Smith's going to make him work for it. And he's going to make him expend political capital to pardon these people. And then others can bring that up about MAGA and about the Republicans. In other words, he's not going to make it just go in the dark, in the quiet, where nobody sees or hears it. He's going to make Donald Trump, on a record of conviction, hopefully, pardon these people. And the threat of a pardon is not going to be enough. So I see the 11th Circuit going forward with this issue. Plus, they want to have a case to reverse her decision because it needs to be erased from the books. And in order to do that, they got to take it up on appeal. So they're right to do it. Keep the case alive against the co-conspirators who don't have presidential immunity, haven't been elected anything, and try to reverse her decision at the 11th Circuit. So it's not the law of the land that other MAGA like Trump can point to in the future. And so that's what's going to happen at Mar-a-Lago. And we'll see what happens with Donald Trump and all of his parts. That's the very reason people are pushing so hard for the Jan 6th defendants to all be sentenced and tried, regardless of the fact that they think they're getting the golden pardon by these DC federal judges. Because if Donald Trump's going to pardon them, the public should know the crimes that they were charged with or convicted of. Again, exacting political capital and making it more painful on the exercise of the pardon. Don't make it easy on them. We'll skip the trial because this is what one federal judge said, Judge Contreras. We'll just skip the trial. It's a waste of judicial resources. He's getting a pardon anyway. Like, can you do your job until you're told not to do your job? That's sort of my approach. And so that's where we are with everything related to Jack Smith. Lastly, let me touch on the reports. They're important. They're going to be heartbreaking because they are going to lay out clearly the crimes that were committed and the evidence about them in a couple of 100 pages apiece, Mar-a-Lago and DC election interference case. And the heartbreak part is going to be that Merrick Garland waited 19 months. It's crazy the amount of time. 19 months to appoint a special counsel to go after it. And the special counsel was, just to remind people, Jack Smith wasn't even picking up the pieces from an ongoing investigation. It was starting an investigation. So I should have been talking about all of these things like a year ago last summer, not now, when we ran out of time. And that's a problem. And that's something that Merrick Garland's going to have to live with. Look, the reality is the skills that go into being a federal judge, which he was, or a potential Supreme Court justice, that kind of erudite, owly, let me stroke my beard on that one. That doesn't work when you're up against Donald Trump and you're supposed to be the Attorney General. You can't be feckless. You got to be aggressive and robust. And you can say a lot of things about Merrick Garland, but robust and muscular and energetic are not one of them. He did a lot of other things. I'm not saying it wasn't, but he went after the Jan 6th lower level people. Hunter Biden got 3 convictions. Okay. Menendez, the senator from New Jersey. But like Trump, what about Trump? If he just started all that earlier, we wouldn't have been in this mess, but he didn't. And that helped. That and another major decision he made, let's be frank. He appointed, because he wanted to be bipartisan, he appointed Robert Hur, a Republican, to be Joe Biden's special counsel. And then we got to sift through a 345-page report by Robert Hur, which basically called Joe Biden at the worst possible moment possible, a doddering old fool who wouldn't be prosecuted because he's too old and feeble to be prosecuted, and the jury would have sympathy for him. He actually wrote that. How did that help us? So Merrick Garland is going to, the history books are not going to be kind to what he did and what he did to the rule of law and democracy, even though he's a very kind man and a decent man, but that's not the man or the person that we needed at that moment in time against somebody like Donald Trump. Now let's move from the hypothetical of what could have been into the reality of what will be. Let me see if I can put this mildly or put it quickly. Donald Trump is going to wreck the American economy. I don't know how else to put this. Between I'm going to deport 11 million people with his combination of Tom Homan and the Homeland Security Director is going to be Kristi Noem and J.D. Vance and the rest of them. 11 million people without regard to the impact on the economy, just blinders on as to the amount of undocumenteds that work in major sectors and in the majority of major sectors of our economy that matter to the average American, like food and the food supply chain and construction and the building of apartments and homes, those things. I thought that was the reason people voted for Donald Trump. So he's going to do 2 things at once. Okay. Finally, he's going to do 2 things at once. He's going to deport 11 million people. There's already been economic analysis that is going to result in a rise in the consumer price index and the cost of goods by between 3 and 10%. So 10%, whatever you like buying now, scrape up another 10% across the board because the people that were doing the dirty jobs in places you don't want to live have been deported. And that's in housing, and that's in the food chain. Because I'll give you some stats. Let me get the numbers right. 500,000 people who are immigrants work in the construction business, the construction industry in this country. 40% of those 200,000 are undocumented. 40%. Just make your labor force If you're an owner or somebody who works, just look around and tomorrow get rid of 40% of the people that are there and try to be just as productive as you are now. Okay? That's that. In the food industry, it's the same. Millions are people that come to this country from other countries that work in the fields, that pick the fruit, that slaughter the chickens, the pigs, and the cows, right? Doing all those dirty jobs in 24-hour shifts and all of that. 40 to 50% of those are undocumented. They disappear tomorrow. What do you think that does to the price and to the economy? And while you're stroking your beard about that, at the same time, let's enter a trade war with 40% of our trade economy and its partners. Now, Donald Trump's big campaign plank was he's going to shut down China. China's had it too good for too long. All right, I saw the numbers he's proposing. He's proposing a 25% tariff on Canadian goods. That means a tax. Everything that Canada sells us just went up by 25% cost-wise. Building materials, food, electronics, things they're good at, you know? Mexico, where lots of things get made. Go into your closet after this or during this hot take or this live podcast and go look at the labels of things in your closet and tell me, you can leave it in the chat, how many say they were made in Mexico? HO and Mexico. Go ahead while we're here. And everything else in your kitchen. Go look underneath the plates, the dishes, and the rest of it, right? And the construction industry relies on undocumented. And so when you have that tariff and everything comes in through even legal people in these countries, let's say on their side of the border, but you increase the price by 25%, what do you think it's going to do with building materials, with the supply chain, with electronics? So 25% for Mexico, 25% for Canada, and 10% for China. I thought China was the bad guy. I didn't realize our North American allies and our major trading partners were the problem. Well, I want to shut down immigration problems and drug trafficking and wreck the economy as a result. In fact, he's challenging the personhood, the balls of Canada, Trudeau, and Mexico's Sheinbaum to retaliate. Claudia Sheinbaum, who got elected the Mexican president, is a PhD economist. You don't think she understands the economy better than Donald Trump? And she's going to fire back with her own 25% tariff on incoming. You know how big of a trading partner Mexico is for goods? Huge. Canada, huge. Trudeau's going to do the same thing. And China is a whole different story. So at the same time, you have your labor force in major sectors that are the levers of our economy. At the same time, do 25% tariffs in North America destroy your trade and your trade deficit? He's going to do it because he has the trade hawks, the tariff hawks in his nominated cabinet. Right? Howard Lutnick for Commerce Secretary is going to be his trade warrior, his tariff warrior. Not that he has any experience in that area, but that's what he's going to do. You know, Steve Bessent, who's going to be on your money under the Secretary of the Treasury, he's a huge tariff hawk. Tariff everything. What do they care to the macroeconomic impact or your household's economy and what it does to that? And at the same time, that's why I said earlier, this isn't Madden football. Let's see what happens if I have 4 kickers and 2 running backs and get rid of my defense. That'll be fun. Let's try it. Right? You've had a couple of, edibles here and there. You think that's sort of fun to run on your TV? I'm talking about the economy. And Donald Trump is not some master strategist about the economy. 6 personal bankruptcies say that for his companies. How many companies does he have to create that go down the drain before you realize he doesn't care about you or the American economy or have a sense about it? He was I'm going to repeat this one more time as a person from New York and New Jersey who followed his entire career and knew people that knew Donald Trump. He was a middling real estate developer that inherited his wealth and his platform from his father. Okay? He was not one of the big players and still isn't in real estate development in New York. I could name the top 5 players. He ain't one of them. He's never really developed much. I mean, projects out of the ground. He puts his name on them after they're done in licensing deals. So he's not some grand economist at all. And yet we now have given him the keys to our economy, and this is what he plans to do. We're going to keep following what's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong. I want to make this clear. I'm not trying to wish the demise of the American economy because of these decision makings. I'm just telling you this is likely to occur if they don't get off this deportation tariff combination, which is deadly and deadly. I mean, it'll be helpful to the Democrats at midterms, but I really care about the American economy. Let's, when I come back, I want to talk about Rudy Giuliani. We have a couple of very interesting clips of Rudy in action and his new lawyer, his third lawyer in action, which I think you guys might enjoy. How do you support things? I know a lot of people are watching the Midas Touch Network, and a growing number are now watching Legal AF, the new YouTube channel. And a lot of people, especially after the election, are like a little bit disheartened, but they're like, how do we support you guys? We see, a little bit of a numbers fluctuation, not as many people on some of the podcasts, how do we want to make sure you're here and support it. It's easy. It's all free. Hit the subscribe button on Midas Touch. Continue to grow that pro-democracy channel. And do the exact same thing over at Legal AF, the YouTube channel. We got 340,000 people right now. We're only 2 months old. And we're continuing to grow. I have a personal goal, which will help me obtain, I'm sure, of 500,000 by Jan 1. We can get there together. I'll do my part, curating the content on Legal AF and bringing you this kind of content on a regular basis here on the Midas Touch Network, our Legal AF podcast, every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern time on this YouTube channel. And in addition to that, on wherever you pick up your audio podcast from. And then, of course, it's the support for our sponsors. I can't stress enough our gratitude for them supporting us, keeping our lights on, and supporting our pro-democracy movement. And we have another word from them now. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This month is all about gratitude. And along with the person I just shouted out, there's another person we don't get to thank enough: ourselves. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we are trying our best to make sense of everything. And in this crazy world, that isn't easy. Here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people in your life, including yourself. Therapy is helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapist anytime for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LegalAF today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/LegalAF. Legal AF is brought to you by Bookshop.org. You may be watching or listening to our show right now, but are you reading enough? It's time to dive back into books and conquer that reading goal you set for yourself this year with Bookshop.org. There are so many great books out right now that help you make sense of this moment. Or maybe you just want to get away from the political and legal noise and unwind with a good novel. Bookshop.org has just the book you're looking for. Bookshop.org is unapologetically anti-Amazon. Why? Because when you purchase from Bookshop.org, you're supporting local independent bookstores, so they'll be around for all of us to enjoy in the future. They're committed to helping independent bookstores not just survive, but thrive and continue to foster culture, curiosity, and a love of reading in your community. Bookshop.org has raised over $30 million for local bookstores. You can even pick which bookstore you want to support, whether it's your local bookstore or your hometown favorite, like mine, Books and Books in Coral Gables, Florida. Bookshop.org is truly for everyone who loves to read and knows the power of a good book. I just finished reading The Nazi Conspiracy by Brad Meltzer and Josh Mensch, and it had me on the edge of my seat about events that happened more than 70 years ago. And thanks to bookshop.org, I had no problem finding a book that I was interested in with just the click of a button. Start feeling good about where you buy books. Use code LEGALAF to get 10% off your next order at bookshop.org. That's code LEGALAF to get 10% off at bookshop.org. Missing someone this holiday season and want them to be a part of your festivities from afar? Like my wife's family in Europe or my mom in Atlanta who we'd love to be with 24/7 but can't, then we've got the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. It's so easy to use with setup that takes less than 60 seconds. And invite friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app or email. No account or subscription required. You can add new photos straight from your phone from anywhere. It only takes a tap on your phone to send new photos to a frame across the country. The Skylight touchscreen is a game changer. Swipe through photos, tap to see new photos sent, and tap the heart button to say thank you to the sender. There are two sizes to choose from, the original 10-inch or larger 15-inch gallery frame. They look perfect in any room, and they can stand on their own, or you can easily mount them to a wall. Skylight's gift mode makes it a very meaningful, personalized gift. You can preload it with memories without opening the box. Surprise them with old sentimental photos as soon as it's plugged in. We're so confident that you'll love Skylight that they offer free 120-day returns. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/legalaf. That's skylightframe.com/legalaf and get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/legalaf. All right, welcome back. Let's talk about Rudy Giuliani, not because I want to, because I have to. Rudy Giuliani, to bring everybody up to speed, was back in court again today. He's got two courts, by the way. All right, let me just fast forward. December 12th, he's going to be back in front of Judge Beryl Howell to answer for being in contempt. He might go to jail on that one. What's the contempt, you may ask? Okay. He's continuing to defame the very people that hold the $150 million judgment against him, which is Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss from the Fulton County, election office counting scandal of 2020. Scandal of the fact they weren't doing anything but counting votes, but they were accused of fraud. On a recent podcast on November 12th and 14th, on his own, The Mayor Speaks, or whatever he calls it, he did it again. He said they were passing a thumb drive between each other that had votes for Biden on it, that they were shoving into the machine, making the vote total fraudulent, which is totally false. We have a word for that in the law, defamatory. We have another word for that in the law. He violated a consent agreement he signed, Rudy Giuliani, in order to avoid future litigation, in which he agreed he would never defame Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss again. And there he was, scrounging for dollars, bowling for dollars on his podcast nobody watches. And he was running out of content, running out of steam. You can hear him running out of steam. So, he's got a producer. I got a guy. I got Salty. He's very good. He's got a guy. He's like anything he can come up with pops out of his head through his mouth. There's no mind mouth barrier, right? It's just completely, there's no barrier. Just right out. He does it again. And the lawyers are listening. So they bring a motion for contempt. The judge is like, yeah, I'll see you on the 12th of December and be in my courtroom. So we got that to look forward to. Now he's back in another federal court in New York before Judge Lyman, a very well-respected judge. Father was a very well-respected lawyer who I think Rudy Giuliani had cases against when he was the Southern District prosecutor, a U.S. attorney. And so Lyman has a hearing today to discuss when they're going to have a hearing about the there's two pieces of property left, two major pieces that haven't been adjudicated by Judge Lyman in the terms of the turnover of assets to Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. He turned over, sort of, the 1980 Mercedes. I'm going to show you a clip in a minute. He turned over some of the household goods that he had. He turned over some things, but not everything he was ordered to turn over 2 weeks ago. because the judgment is the judgment. He has no defense to the judgment of punitive damages and defamation, $150 million, and he's got to turn things over. But he's been dragging his feet. He's through his third set of lawyers. This new guy, Joe Camerata, who's like a personal injury lawyer in Staten Island, suddenly shows up to represent the mayor. And the slow footing of this foot dragging is pissing off the lawyers for Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, who are doing this for free, pro bono, and they dragged him back into court today. So the judge wanted to know what was going on with the turnover, and the judge wanted to set a time for when the last hearing in the case is going to be about the Florida condo that he owns and whether that gets turned over to Ruby Freeman or Shay Moss and these Yankee rings. Now, first we had the turnover about the 1980 Mercedes, one that Rudy Giuliani infamously drove when he should have turned it over on election day to go vote for Donald Trump down in Florida. And we know it because there's video and there's photos of it, and we ran it on the Midas Touch Network. Okay. He finally has to turn it over. And who shows up to do the turnover at some car warehouse in Hialeah, Florida, of all places? Joe Camerata, the new lawyer for Rudy Giuliani. And I'm on the edge of my seat on this one. He's narrating a video of his turnover, making his already rejected legal argument about why the cars shouldn't be turned over. But he's using the opportunity, like he's making a TikTok, to make his federal argument before he actually entered an appearance in the case. We actually have that clip. We ran it on Midas Touch. Let's roll the clip.
I'm here in Miami turning in the mayor's only mode of transportation thanks to a court order compelling him to do so. This despite existing exemptions which should have protected the car and allowed for the mayor to retain it. We were being forced to turn the car over, his only mode of transportation, because of this court order from this totally outrageous $148 million judgment.
Okay, one of my favorite parts of that, Salty added in the clip, is when Joe Camerata motions with the key. This car, his only mode of transportation. So Rudy's, when he's not doing these outbursts and yelling at him, I'll tell you about that in a minute, he's pleading poverty. Oh, they took my Social Security. I can't open a bank account, and I couldn't write you a check if I had a checkbook. And woe is me. Well, maybe you shouldn't defame two election workers, make them run for their lives because you claim that they were involved in a fraudulent conspiracy with Venezuela. These poor Fulton County, Georgia election workers. Maybe you should think twice before you speak, and how you spoke just 2 weeks ago on your podcast. So what happened is in court today, Rudy sometimes forgets that he's not a lawyer anymore. And I mean, literally, he's not a lawyer anymore. He had 2 bar licenses to practice, one in Washington, one in New York. He lost both of them. So he has a lawyer. It's this guy you just heard, Joe Camerata, who's not qualified to do this job. He's not a federal court lawyer. He's a guy that I'm sure Judge Lyman's never heard of. He's the only guy that would take the case. Joe Camerata from Staten Island. He's not even the most famous Joe Camerata. There's another Joe Camerata who used to represent Paula Jones against Bill Clinton. And he didn't want to be confused with this Joe Camerata, so he put up on his website, I'm not the Joe Camerata that's currently representing Rudy Giuliani. I'm like, it's so bad now. People are taking out ads to say they don't represent Rudy Giuliani. And so Joe Camerata is in court today, but of course, Rudy doesn't have respect for him either. So he throws over his lawyer. And the only topic today is, why aren't you turning over the title? You saw the car got turned over, but where's the title? You didn't get the duplicate title turned over. And the judge decides he's going to chastise Rudy Giuliani through his lawyer a little bit. You were the U.S. attorney, the top federal officer in Southern District, New York, Manhattan, the most elite prosecutor's office. You can't get a duplicate title done? And Rudy's like, oh, I take offense to that. You have all sorts of assumptions, and this is my artist rendering because we don't have audio. There's all sorts of misrepresentations about me. And, blah, blah, blah. And the judge says, here, I got another thing to remind you of. You're in federal court, and I'm the judge. You have 2 choices. I either swear you in as a witness on the stand, and then you can say whatever you want under oath, which means I'll take it into account when I find you in contempt. Or you can let your lawyers do their job. Or you can be your own lawyer. But this hybrid thing, where you're saying stuff out loud and the lawyer sits there quietly, that's not happening anymore. And so he shut him down there. And the only other thing left was scheduling a hearing for whether the condo in Florida is a Florida asset, so it won't be turned over, because there's a whole thing I won't bore you with called homestead protection in Florida. That's why all deadbeats go to Florida and buy houses. They protect homes from judgments. And he's trying to argue that he's homesteaded because he lives in Florida year round, but there has to be a certain date when he did that. And I think Rudy effed up the date, and there's going to be a whole evidentiary hearing about that. And if Rudy's wrong, he's going to lose that condo too. And he is going to be homeless. And then the remaining issue is whether the Yankee rings, here come the Yankee rings he got as mayor, not because he played in the game, are his, or did he gift them over to Andrew Giuliani back in 2018, even though he continues to wear them? Because if he gifted them, well, then they're not his property. And of course, Andrew Giuliani, to help out his dad's like, I got those as a gift. They're supposed to be mine. All my artist renderings sound the same, by the way. I use the same accent. And so there's going to be a big hearing about it. Is there enough proof to show that these were not part of the estate of the property owned by Rudy Giuliani and he gifted it to his people? But then, of course, on the way, I don't know if it was in or out of the courthouse that same day, there's this great clip of Rudy with Joe Camerata, this balding guy next to him, talking about what just happened in the courtroom. And we actually have it for you. So we're going to play it. Let's play it.
Reality is, I have no cash. It's all tied up. So right now, if I wanted to call a taxi cab, I can't do it. I don't have a credit card. I don't have a checking account. I have no place I can go take cash out except a little bit that I saved, and it's getting down to almost nothing. I have a business. I can do business expenses, but I'm very careful about that because God forbid I should make a mistake between a personal and a business expense. Unlike Hunter Biden, I go to jail right away.
Sorry, coming out of the video. It looks like I lost power where I'm at. I'm sharing a plug in this hotel, so I had to plug in my computer. So the guy in the magenta maroon suit or jacket, that's Joe Camerata. He looks a little bit uncomfortable there as his client says, all my money's tied up. I don't have any. I'm cash poor, but I'm asset rich, whatever he's trying to say there. He does have a business. And let me just tell people out there that they will, after they get all these assets out of, and they will, from Rudy Giuliani, including, I think, the home in Florida, whatever's left, there's going to be like $140 million left of the judgment that has to be paid. Then they will garnish his wages. They'll go after the money that he's making on these podcasts. And this will be the last chapter of Rudy Giuliani's sordid career. And that's it. And today they asked, not even nicely, Joe Camerata and Rudy Giuliani, the judge says, we're going to have a hearing. It's going to be on the 15th of January. And we're going to talk about your rings and your condo. And they said, oh, no, the 20th of January is the inauguration. And Rudy's working and planning on that. What kind of planning is he doing for the inauguration, by the way? You know, he's 80. He's like 85 years old. He barely can plan how to get up in the morning. No, I'm not dissing 85-year-olds. I'm talking about I've met Rudy Giuliani. He's not a well man. I'll just put it that way. And the judge said, no, your social calendar that you want to attend the inauguration does not concern me. We're having a hearing on the 15th of January about this evidentiary issue, and you can be there. But it's 5 days before the inauguration anyway, which is why I'm sure Judge Lyman was like annoyed. And it came after they had already had the outburst where the judge said, you got two choices. You know, you're either going to be on the stand or you're going to be your own lawyer, but you're not doing this other thing. So that's sort of where we are on the Tuesday, and we wanted to kind of come live on this and to bring it to your attention. There's another way to support us, of course. Tomorrow, midweek edition of Legal AF. I do that with Karen Friedman and Nick Niflo. I'm on the road, but I will be there because it's that important and to go over things through our perspective at the intersection of law and politics. Then Saturday, back with Ben Meiselas, the co-founder with me of Legal AF, and we'll be doing that and catching up from the week in our own unique perspectives at the intersection. Pick us up on YouTube for Midas Touch. Everything Legal AF is now sort of housed in one place as well. You can pick up my hot takes and my new work and the podcast and everything also on Legal AF, the YouTube channel. So support us there. Hit the free subscribe button. That's all it takes. And otherwise, you can pick us up on audio podcast platforms of your choice and regular work that I do on Midas Touch as well. So I really appreciate you all being here. This is our third Tuesday night live. We got this great new audience that we didn't know we had, but we do. And I do appreciate each and every one of you. I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday and then on our Legal AF regular editions. I'm Michael Popok, and I am reporting. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.